Welcome. I'm Dr. Jerry Nolan, and this is Love is the Answer. In this segment, we're going to examine, compare and contrast arrogance versus humility in helping us build relationships with our students, our loved ones, and others. Arrogance tends to separate us from each other. Humility binds us to one another. The Latin root word for arrogant, arrogans, has many meanings, including being rude, insolent, disrespectful, overbearing, or presumptuous. None of these are loving behaviors, and they hinder, they wound relationships. Here's what one student told me about a teacher who he perceived as being arrogant. It's not really the information that they are giving. It's more that they are selling their personality. The units and the activities can be really exciting, but it's more like how they're presenting the material, personality-wise. If a teacher doesn't respect you, if they are arrogant, even if the class is interesting at times, it's a major turnoff for me. We don't want that. We don't want our personality, how we come across, to interfere with learning. So the question becomes, why do we sometimes act that way? We don't mean to. And I just want to talk about three things that probably have an impact. My experience is that we sometimes exhibit arrogance out of fear. And I encourage you to sort of examine your own fears. I'm going to talk about my early teaching career in three areas that I was fearful in that probably made me come across as insolent, rude, overbearing. First one was knowledge. My first year of teaching, I taught three subjects: Native American history, never took a class in it, hadn't read a book on the subject. I taught psychology and sociology. I was a broad field social studies major, pretty well versed in history and government. And so I'm teaching three classes that I'm not really very well versed in. And when I would get challenged by students, I think one of the things is I would come back as, a little rude in that I was afraid of my own knowledge base and being sort of inadequate to the job. The second is classroom management, which is a challenge for almost all first-year teachers. And when I look back on that, what I find is when I wasn't very good at it, which was most of the time, I got to be overbearing. And then that would come across as being rude, being very defensive. And the last thing, preparation time. I was teaching three different courses, coaching two sports. One as a head coach, was an assistant coach. And time was really precious. And there were so often times that I went into a class and I did not feel prepared. I wasn't prepared. And then you sort of kind of build up this, false sense of security or whatever it is. And I think it comes across as rude, defensive, arrogant. So those are three examples that, from my own experience. I share these not as sort of a judgment on you or teachers in general. I share those examples in terms of this. Look at your own practice, your own weaknesses, and sometimes we try to cover those over with a little bit of arrogance, a little bit of overbearing insolence. And but what it really is, deep down, is a fear that we have, that we're not quite up to the challenge. And with humility, we are just honest, and that we aren't quite up to the challenge. The Latin root for humility is humilitas, which means grounded, of the earth, dirt. There's nothing more humble, more basic than dirt. And it means for us professionally being honest with where we are professionally, being able to look at where we need to grow. For my own part, the three areas: very little knowledge base. I had to take some classes, had to do a lot of reading, had to work with other teachers. Classroom management. There's real skills to that, and you don't get much training for that in college. And so I went to teachers who had never had any problems classroom management wise, and learned from them. One of the great lessons they taught me was, if you're really good at teaching and you make it interesting, the kids don't give you a problem. And I have found that to be largely true. When I'm boring, the kids were a problem. And then time management. We all have that. That goes throughout our entire career. And what really helped me there was Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and first things first, prioritize what's most important, get that done, and everything else just sort of washes out. So what we have to be is humble in where we are professionally, just as kids. Kids going through school, we don't expect them to know everything. We're there to help teach them, to help them work along. Other teachers are there, and our principals are there to help us, and we have to do some things ourselves. There's always more that we don't know than we do know, and we just have to be humble about that. Arrogance, in its many forms, separates us from our students, our mission, our loved ones. Humility binds us to one another in our humanness. We all have reasons to be humble. I have many, more than I can count. Arrogance closes more doors than it opens. Stay humble. Thank you. We hope you enjoyed this segment. We invite you to read our companion blogs at drjerrynolan.com. View all our videos on our YouTube channel, Love is the Answer. Like us on Facebook. And as always, on behalf of me and my entire family, we wish you an abundance of peace and love.